Breaking tonight, reports of huge, life-threatening tornadoes in the south. At least one big airport is putting in place a ground stop. Schools are getting locked down. Officials say at least a dozen people are hurt. We've got the forecast. Plus, Attorney General Merrick Garland naming a special counsel now to look at how President Biden handled classified documents as vice president, what we know about the prosecutor who will lead this investigation, and the questions we have for a White House that has repeatedly promised transparency. And a new report shows prices are down for a 6th straight month, but there's one breakfast staple that might still kind of hurt to see rung up at the grocery store. We'll look at why. Plus, the number of the day, 142, if you're Congressman George Santos, doing his best Wolf of Wall Street impression to say, I ain't leaving. The steps Speaker McCarthy says he's going to take. And our team's exclusive reporting on an exclusive part of Miami where a so-called condo king's building a super expensive mega project that's really highlighting just how much it costs to find a place to live these days. Plus, some reverse manifest destiny for InNOut, a trip east of the Mississippi. Why animal-style double-doubles are not just for the Pacific Coast anymore. That's later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and tonight we're starting in the south, where you've got big, life-threatening tornadoes tearing through the region, alongside some powerful thunderstorms affecting tens of millions of people tonight from Alabama to Kentucky. In Alabama alone, there have been 23 reported tornadoes across the state, and you are seeing the damage that's been left behind here, right? This is what it looks like now. The National Weather Service in Birmingham saying so far they've gotten devastating reports of damage. In Morgan County, officials say between 10 and 15 people have been hurt by the storm. You can see one storm cloud, but to show it literally moving through Selma in one of these videos. The mayor in that city say they've also seen significant damage from the tornado, with officials telling people stay home, do not travel right now. Nearly 160,000 people don't have power across the south. And in Atlanta, you've got flights grinding to a standstill because of the weather. And students at Emory University are being told to take shelter because of a tornado warning there. Meanwhile, out west, most of California is getting a break from all the rain and snow they've been having today. But we are learning more about just how deadly this storm has been. There are also more coming, if you can believe it. More storms on the way for people in California. 3 storms tonight and going into next week. Communities near California's Monterey Peninsula have evacuated that spot over concerns that the nearby river would overflow its banks and turn that area into an island. Marissa Parra is in Sonoma County in California with the latest on the ground there. We've also got Bill Cairns here to talk us through what's going on down south. I think I see Bill here right next to me. Bill, talk us through it, because this is scary. This is happening now.
We've had many lives altered significantly in Alabama today, and it's really been the focus of Alabama. We have had 23 tornadoes reported today in Alabama alone. You notice all these little icons show you where they've been. We've had one just north of Mobile. We've had a couple reported in the northern northwest portion of the state, but the majority was through the central portion of the state, including the one in Selma right there. And this tornado appears to be what we call a long track strong tornado. So that means it's a tornado that can do significant damage, and it appears that it was on the ground for a majority of an hour, hour and a half, and it was traveling at 50 to 60 miles per hour. So that's going to be a damage path of about 60 miles. And that's the one that we think has done the most significant damage. I've seen many mobile homes completely destroyed, brick buildings with roofs collapsed, walls that have fallen over. There's first responders that are on the scene throughout the state of Alabama going and trying to get people rescued. Phone services down in many areas also. And additionally, with one of the concerns that we're going to watch now for the next couple hours is going to be this area here in Georgia. So here's Atlanta. Atlanta, you're safe. But we've been in Griffin, Georgia. We had a tornado emergency not long ago. And with this storm right here, we know we had a confirmed tornado. So even at this hour in Madison, Georgia, the tornado sirens are going off. People are going into their safe rooms. The kids were home from school, thankfully, now. Earlier today, I know we had sirens going off with kids in school and everyone diving under desks and getting to their safe areas. And these tornado watches, this one for Charlotte, North Carolina, Augusta, Georgia, Columbia, South Carolina, all of the upstate area till 10 o'clock. This tornado watch from Dothan, Alabama through Albany, Georgia, just north of Tallahassee until 9 p.m. So we're not completely done. And this is the area that we're right now targeting, Atlanta to Macon, and then tonight into South Carolina. But Hallie, I mean, the people in Alabama, this was a dangerous day. And I've seen many pictures just like this one. Yeah. I think we'll end up with, maybe a dozen, 2 dozen tornadoes out of this by the time we're totally done. And some of these tornadoes have been strong, what we call EF3 or even EF4 tornadoes, and those are ones that are strong enough, that completely destroy structures. These have not been weak tornadoes.
So walk through, though, I mean, because as it gets darker, we know that tornadoes are deadliest in the evening, at night, et cetera. Does it sound like the risk is going to be over by, like, let's say midnight, or is that a relevant concern here for people down south?
I'd say we're maybe 80–90% through this outbreak, and thankfully earlier today we did have a lot of storm chasers out there giving us confirmation of these tornadoes, so we had a bigger heads up, probably saved a lot of lives. Now that the sun has set, we still have a risk of additional tornadoes. Obviously, we won't get the heads up if they're on the ground or not, but we're at the tail end of this outbreak, but we're not done.
Bill Cairns, please stay on. I know you're going to stay on top of this one. Stay close to a camera because we want updates from you if we can get them. Thank you very much for that. I want to bring in Marissa now, who's in Sebastopol. And Marissa, we talk about the storms down south, scary and dangerous. We talk about the storms out west. They are deadly, and we're now finding out more about that, specifically in Sonoma County. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about the situation here in California, you might see we're finally seeing sun for the first time in days, Hallie. This is the first time since I've been here that I haven't been wearing a rain jacket. But here's the issue. You have waterlogged soil that is still posing problems across the state. Look at this tree behind me. You don't want this falling on your house. You don't want this falling on your car. And unfortunately, we are seeing that happen. I mean, the roots are as big as I am. And this has proven deadly already. We're just miles away from where a toddler was killed when a tree fell on top of his house while he was inside of it. That was a week and a day ago. But we're also seeing situations where trees have fallen onto highways. They've fallen onto roads as people were driving. When we look at the death toll, which is now at least 21 have died, we know that 2 people were killed because of a tree that fell on the road in front of them as they were driving. So that is still posing a problem for people across the state. These trees are waterlogged. But then, of course, as we've mentioned, the landslides, the mudslides. And Hallie, the worst part is that we may be getting a break today. We're hearing chainsaws. We're hearing the chainsaws of people removing trees, trying to cut them off. We know that tree removal crews working around the clock right now. That is what today is for, but there is more rain on the way. We understand 12 million people under flood watch between Saturday and Sunday morning between Sacramento Valley and the Bay Area.
Marissa Parr, thank you very much. Glad you're there for us on the ground. Appreciate it. Let's take it back to Washington now, because right as we were coming on the air tonight, we got some new reaction from the White House on that significant news that Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed a special counsel to look into how President Biden handled classified documents after his attorneys found what they're calling a small number of this kind of thing at his D.C. office, and we're learning today his home in Delaware, specifically in his garage and in one other room. The White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, taking a lot of questions from reporters today, but really not going much beyond what the statements are from the president's attorneys, et cetera. Listen to some of this.
I want to be prudent here and make sure if you have any additional questions about where things were found, again, I refer you to the statement. I'm not going to go beyond what the president said.
And as this is all going down to the briefing room, we're learning more from Attorney General Garland about the timeline over at the Justice Department. So the White House says the president's attorneys first found some of these documents in a Biden office on November 2nd. And on the 4th, the archives called the DOJ to let them know. The election, the midterms came and went. And then on the November 9th, the FBI got involved. After that, the Attorney General appointed a U.S. attorney, John Lausch, to look into it all a few days later. In December, just a few days before Christmas on the 20th, the president's attorneys came to Lausch and said, hey, we found a second batch in the president's home. Now that brings us into January, this month, this year, 2023, where Attorney General Garland says he was briefed on the investigation a week ago, but it wasn't until just this past Monday, a couple days ago, this was reported publicly here. Just this morning, the president's attorneys told Lausch they had found one more document at his Delaware home. Listen to how the president is responding to some questions about this today. Watch.
Classified material next to your Corvette. What were you thinking?
Let me, I'm going to get a chance to speak on all this, God willing, soon. But as I said earlier this week, people, and by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage, okay? So it's not like you're sitting out in the street. People know I take classified documents and classified material seriously. I also said we're cooperating fully and completely with the Justice Department's review.
There are still a lot of questions about these batches of documents, their level of classification, who packed them up, how they got to the home, to the office, what, if any, involvement the president had, and questions about transparency, frankly, from the White House. I want to bring in Carol Lee and Ken Delaney in here, but I want to start with Carol because, Carol, we're hearing tonight from the special counsel to the president, who is the lawyer, basically, who's outwardly confident that this could work out for them, right? Writing a statement in part that says, we are confident that a thorough review will show that these documents were inadvertently misplaced and that the president and his lawyers acted promptly upon discovery of this mistake. Two key things in that, right? They're saying it was accidental, and they're saying we gave him back the second that we found out that something happened here. Legal experts say that that makes such a difference as it relates to any kind of culpability if that in fact does turn out to be the case.
Sure, Hallie. I mean, that's what the feds will be looking for was there any malintent here? Was this intentional? Was there something nefarious going on here? What you're hearing really for the first time in the very explicit terms from the White House counsel's office is that this was a mistake. Nobody meant to do this. It was an accident. We have been cooperating. We will continue to fully cooperate. Now, the question, though, that we still have, just in the sense of how this all happened, is how did the former vice president, when he was former Vice President Biden, how did those documents come to get from where they were in his office to a different storage space and then moved around and then in these various storage spaces? And then when you have this situation where on November 2nd, his lawyers discover some of these classified documents while clearing out his office here in Washington, D.C., then what happens after that? There's a little bit of a time gap in the sense that we don't know exactly when the president's team started to search his Wilmington home and his Rehoboth, Delaware home for any potential additional documents. All we know is that they found an additional batch of documents on December 20th and then turned over another document today.
What was interesting was some of these questions that Karine Jean-Pierre got, the White House press secretary, and frankly, the president got pressed on this a bit too. But the idea of, hey, why didn't you tell us when you knew, right? And why didn't you tell us more about this other batch of documents when you knew that those existed? What's the explanation behind that?
Yeah, they don't really have a good one. They just, what you hear from the press secretary is we're following a process, we're following a process, we're following a process. But one thing that's really notable when it comes to transparency, Hallie, is that on Monday, when CBS News first reported that there were classified documents that have been discovered at the president's office here in Washington, D.C., after he left the Obama administration, that the statement that was put out by the White House counsel's office did not at all suggest that there was a second batch. And they knew at that time that there was that second batch on December 20th. We reported that there was a second batch yesterday, and only this morning did the White House counsel's office say, yes, we found additional documents.
Carol Lee, thank you very much. It's great reporting. I appreciate you being on the tip of the spear on this one for all of us. Thanks. Let me bring in Ken Delaney on the justice side of all of this. Special counsel now. Here we have a special counsel, another one, Robert Hur. Explain who he is, what it means that he's now involved in this.
Rob Hur has a sterling, gold-plated resume. He's a career prosecutor, Harvard, Stanford law grad, Supreme Court clerk, worked his way up the ranks of the Justice Department, prosecuted gang cases, corporate fraud cases, you name it. And then he was, he's a Republican, he's a registered Republican, and he was named to a senior position in the Trump Justice Department, the principal assistant deputy attorney general, which sort of has their hands on the rudder of the entire Justice Department. It's kind of a management job. And then after that, Trump named him U.S. attorney in Maryland. So he is a Republican appointee and a Trump appointee, but he's been praised by Democrats today as a fair-minded person, someone they think who's not a partisan, is really more of a career prosecutor model who can really bring this investigation home. Take a listen to what Garland said today about why he felt he had to make this move.
I strongly believe that the normal processes of this department can handle all investigations with integrity. But under the regulations, the extraordinary circumstances here require the appointment of a special counsel for this matter.
And what's remarkable about this, Hallie, is that what this means is that the Republican U.S. attorney in Chicago, who reviewed this matter for weeks with the FBI, could not rule out wrongdoing. This is a criminal investigation ongoing that involves the sitting president of the United States.
I think it's worth noting that we're hearing from Special Counsel Hur for the first time tonight, writing in a statement, and I'm quoting here, that I will conduct the assigned investigation with fair, impartial, and dispassionate judgment. I intend to follow the facts swiftly and thoroughly without fear or favor, and will honor the trust placed in me to perform this service. That is what you would expect to hear from a special counsel, right, Ken? Like, that is not a surprise here. Walk us through the timeline. How long might it take for this to come to a resolution? And you know, the political context here, too, because there is another special counsel investigating a different president in very different scenarios, by the way, for having classified documents, too.
Yeah, it's a really remarkable, extraordinary situation. We have the sitting president and his leading political opponent now both under scrutiny by federal prosecutors. But on its face, this doesn't seem like an investigation that should take very long, especially because we know the FBI already has been interviewing, as we've reported, some of the key Biden aides who handled the documents. But the real question, the only question really in terms of criminality in this case, is was this intentional? Was this willful? Was there some reason that Joe Biden or somebody else grabbed these classified documents, or was this a mistake? If it was a sloppy mistake, it was not a crime, and that's the end of it. But when you leave aside that question, there's also the question of national security damage, Hallie. That's really not the subject of Rob Hur's investigation, but it's going to be the subject of a Director of National Intelligence damage assessment. So even if this was innocent, the fact is these documents, these classified documents, were in places that weren't secure, and if they were exposed to adversaries or people who weren't supposed to see them, that could have really damaged national security, whether it was intentional or not.
Ken Delaney, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Now to the news that President Biden maybe wants to talk more about today, and that's the economy, with a new report showing inflation is ever slowly getting a little bit easier. Check out the top line numbers. Prices up 6.5% from last year, with a little bitty decrease month to month, now on a 6-month drop. What's driving that? Gas prices, which the president kind of took some credit for earlier today. Watch.
My administration took action to get oil onto the market and bring down prices. Now gas is down more than $1.70 from its peak.
Okay. Should you go throw a party? Well, here's some other context for you. A top credit rating service estimates the average American family spending $371 more a month for the same stuff they've been buying. Groceries are the big reasons why. You see the price increases, bread, chicken, especially eggs over the last year. The egg spike, by the way, in part because of this avian flu outbreak. And you can see the very real sticker shock when people go to the grocery store.
This little bag, it's $12 worth of ham, okay? It probably was $5 a year ago.
Brian Chung is breaking down the numbers for us. All right, Brian, talk us through it.
Yeah, so when you talk about food and gas, yes, there's certainly a lot of factors in there, but let's take a look again at the overall numbers. So 6.5%, this is the magic number that we got in the morning. This is how much more prices are higher in December compared to the year prior. That's a step down from the 7.1%, but take a look at the context here as we look at the year-over-year changes over the last few years. And look, 9.1% was the pace that we had seen in the summer last year, so it's coming down, but mission not accomplished. Why? Policymakers say we really want to be here, 2%, so there's a long way to go. But if you unpack the inflation report, you can see that there are still price pressures coming from the biggest expenditures like shelter. This is the catch-all bucket for things like both rent and also mortgage. That actually got more expensive between November and December compared to October to November. Also, food up 0.5 percentage point in November, up about 1/3 percentage point in December. And again, eggs up, get this, 11% just in the month, as you mentioned, because of that avian flu. But gasoline was the big reason why we saw that top line number come in, by the way, right around estimates. That decreased by 9.4% as we saw better prices at the pump. But some other silver linings that we saw, there were some price categories that saw price declines, namely flour, women's dresses, and also tax preparation software. So some good news there.
Okay, well, I guess tax season is on its way. Talk about what this means and how this plays into the Fed piece of it, right? Because this is not the report the Fed loves to use for inflation. They want inflation to be going up more slowly, right? How do you read the tea leaves on that front as it relates to the potential for more interest rate hikes?
Yeah, the Federal Reserve likes to look at the other measure of inflation, personal consumption expenditures. But again, you take a look at this chart right here. The Fed needs to get this number all the way down here, which is the reason why they're making borrowing costs more expensive. And the expectation is they'll continue to make borrowing costs more expensive by raising interest rates. And they raised by 0.5 percentage point in the last meeting in December. The expectation is they'll raise again in their next meeting, which begins January 31st, decision on February 1st. And the expectation, they'll raise by 0.25 percentage point. We'll have to watch that.
Brian Chung, thank you very much. Good to see you. Let's take you to Idaho now, where the suspect in the murder of 4 University of Idaho students was back in court today, waiving his right to a speedy preliminary or probable cause hearing. Basically, this was fairly perfunctory. Victims' families were not in court, but an attorney for one of those families was there. We've got the suspect being held in county jail without bail. Next court date not until June. It comes as we're hearing from more people who knew the suspect. Steve Patterson joins us now. And so, Steve, talk to us about the court hearing today. Again, fairly standard? And importantly, what else we're learning about this alleged killer and what's happening there in Idaho?
Yeah, I would say starting off with that hearing, as you mentioned, perfunctory, really process hearing that lasted maybe all of about 15 minutes or so. That's how long Kohberger was in court. The big headline you mentioned, which is that instead of what's called a speedy preliminary hearing, he waived the right to that. So instead of it happening, and this is key, in the next 14 days or so, it's going to happen now in June, so now months and months away. That's advice from his attorneys. He's getting that because they want to pay attention to what comes out of discovery. They want to pay attention to the details in the case. Anything that may be sealed or not known, they want to know that before they go into that, that hearing. Because it's a big deal. From what we hear, both sides can present witnesses, both sides expected to present evidence, and it really weighs on the judge as to moving forward with an eventual trial and, of course, the arraignment before an eventual trial, if there is one. So it's a big deal, and those attorneys wanted the time to have that.
Yeah.
But again, this hearing, all of 14, 15 minutes or so, he was in, he was out. It appeared like he had some bruising, some cuts on his face. Important to note that. So a lot of character work here on top of sort of the process of the courtroom. But really, everybody here has that same somberness that we spoke about yesterday. A lot of the students a little still weary. A lot of the larger community, both here at Washington State, still wary about going out at night. All of that is going to exist for a long, long time here, Hallie.
Steve Patterson, live for us there in Moscow, Idaho. Steve, thank you very much. Appreciate it. New York Republican Congressman George Santos today basically saying he doesn't care what some of his fellow Republicans want. He's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. Listen.
I came here to serve the people, not politicians and party leaders, and I'm going to do just that. I wish well all of their opinions, but I was elected by 142,000 people. Until those same 142,000 people tell me they don't want me, we'll find out in 2 years.
Keep in mind, those 142,000 people voted for him before that New York Times investigation broke that found he lied on his resume while running for office about where he worked, where he went to school, etc. And while more of his colleagues on Capitol Hill are now, this week, today, calling for his resignation. Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who, remember, is only leading a Republican conference that has a razor-thin majority in the House, is not ready to jump on the step-down train just yet, let's call it.
The voters of his district have elected him. He is seated. He is part of the Republican conference. There are concerns about it, so he will go before ethics. If anything is found to be wrong, he will be held accountable exactly as anybody else in this body would be.
Joining me now is Hallie Vitale. And Hallie, Kevin McCarthy says Santos is going to go through the ethics committee process. So, okay, what does that even mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, Hallie, we're probably not going to hear too much about that until they come up with a recommendation. And the reason I say that is because these kinds of things are notoriously done behind closed doors. The ethics committee is evenly divided between Republicans and Democrats. And look, they could recommend a fine after they look into things. They could even recommend that he be expelled from Congress. But they don't have the power to do that. That would require a 2/3 majority vote on the floor of the House. It doesn't seem like there's much of an appetite right now for this. The thing that I keep hearing from Republicans that I talk to is Democrats didn't object to Santos being seated, and so he's here now. Even if people are saying that they think he should resign, which several of his Republican colleagues and most of the New York delegation is, it's not changing, clearly, his mindset around this.
Tell me about the way that this plays out, though, because one thing that I've heard from Democrats I spoke with, as you know, one member of leadership today who said, hey, man, this is basically a Republicans' mess. They got to clean it up. Republicans have a really tight margin, as we said, right? Like, there is a political incentive for them, for Santos to stay in the conference. This question has come up about, well, if he can't be trusted to, like, tell the truth about his resume, like, maybe you can't trust him with key intel, national security secrets, et cetera. It's the balancing act that Republicans are walking here.
When you were talking to Congressman Jim Clyburn earlier, I was struck by this, and then earlier in the day when Hakeem Jeffries said it, the idea that this is Republicans' mess, they should clean it up. Of course Democrats would like them to do that, not just because this is clearly someone within the Republican ranks who lied about his resume and has a whole slew of other ethical and frankly legal concerns that are mounting around his campaign finances, where the money came from, how it was dealt with, what was reported or wasn't. All of these are open questions that other entities much larger and with bigger teeth than Congress are looking into right now. But the political concerns are critical here. I mean, you talk about the fact that the Republican majority is so slim already. That numbers game that we were watching McCarthy play all last week in order to become Speaker, that's the numbers game he's going to be playing over the course of the next 2 years in trying to get anything done. You look at the map and the demographics on the ground in New York, in this Long Island area of the state, this is a place that demographically tilts more blue based on the way that things were in 2020. It was a pro-Biden area of the map. That's going to be something that factors in here as well, because if this were to go and it's just an open seat, a total free-for-all, those dynamics of the demographics, plus the fact that it would be viewed in many ways as a referendum on Santos, and clearly we've had our reporters on the ground there, voters on the ground are not too fond of him. Democrats have a lot of reason to feel confident about how they would do there. I mean, you got to imagine, Hallie, the millions of dollars that would get poured into this part of New York. All of us would be camped out there covering it. It's not something that Republican leaders want to leave to chance, and that's probably another reason why they're not banging down the door saying, yeah, he should resign, we're with the state party.
Hallie Vitale, live for us there on Capitol Hill. It's the story that has a new twist, it seems, every day. I'm sure we'll talk again very soon. Hallie, thank you. Federal prosecutors are invoking the words of former President Trump to open up a really high-profile January 6th trial, saying the Proud Boys did not stand back. They did not stand by. Instead, they mobilized. Don't make any mistake about this. This trial, this is a big one, with our team calling this kind of the Super Bowl of January 6th trials. 5 members of the self-described Western chauvinist group, the Proud Boys, face charges of seditious conspiracy, that's a serious charge, and assaulting police. You see them here. They've all pleaded not guilty, including the group's leader, Enrique Tarrio. He actually was not at the Capitol for the attack because he'd already been arrested days before for something separate. Tarrio's lawyer, in an opening statement that just wrapped up, acknowledged he said a lot of offensive things, but that the government is making him, he says, the scapegoat. More on this as this trial unfolds. Coming up here on the show, FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried said he did not steal billions of dollars in people's money, why he thinks the company collapsed. Plus, we learned today that last year was one of the hottest on record. What U.S. officials are saying next in our 5 things. Elon Musk has apparently broken a world record for something, and some people are finding it kind of hard to tell if it's embarrassing or a flex. That's coming up in our 5 things. But first, Sam Bankman-Fried, founder of that now disgraced, now collapsed crypto company FTX. Well, guess what? He's talking again, this time in this long blog post, trying to explain just how this whole thing happened. And listen, he is in full defense mode, saying, I didn't steal funds, and I certainly didn't stash billions away. He also says he thinks FTX could have survived this whole mess, but only if he'd been allowed to keep running the company, saying if it were to reboot, I believe there is a real chance customers could be made substantially whole. He's under house arrest at his parents' place right now, charged with fraud and money laundering while waiting on his trial to start later this year. Kate Rooney is joining us now. Kate, I'm glad to have you on here. You know, one of the things with Sam Bankman-Fried is he just keeps coming out and saying stuff, right? So now he's coming out with this long blog post saying that FTX lost money because of a market crash it wasn't ready for. Really on defense here. Talk us through the highlights and what you see as the most significant.
Yeah, so Hallie, Sam Bankman-Fried is once again really trying to chalk this up to sloppiness and risk, essentially. He looks to move the conversation away from some of the accusations we've talked about that he was embezzling or stealing customer money, and he pointed to a lot of other failed crypto firms, tried to put them in the same category, saying, you know, they went through the same thing. He talked about the bigger picture here, the result of the firm Alameda that was also associated with his company FTX that's now bankrupt. He said they didn't hedge, so it was sort of a failure, as he put it, to make sure they had downside protection, talked about something they call leverage on Wall Street, or really taking on too much risk. He brought up the decline of publicly traded stocks like Tesla and then the Invesco QQQ, which tracks some of the tech stocks. So it seems to really be obfuscating here and trying to shift the conversation. He also compared it to Lehman Brothers in the financial crisis. So in this case, you'd much rather be compared to Lehman Brothers than Elizabeth Holmes and Bernie Madoff, which are some of the big comparisons. And we know how those cases ended up with both of those people in jail after being accused of fraud.
I mean, part of the interesting thing that you talk about is this whole blaming of other people, right? Like blaming the CEO of Binance, et cetera. Like, how does that hold up in court? Like, I don't know how that actually works. If it does at all, Kate. Right. That might be like a leading question. I really am just, you know.
No, it's a great question. I think this is probably a little bit of a sneak peek into his legal strategy, that he is trying to shift the blame. He's talked about a months-long effort in the case of, you mentioned that company Binance. It's one of their biggest competitors. It's now the largest global player out there, and he made the argument that this was a months-long campaign against FTX. The CEO of Binance said in a tweet at one point that FTX really killed themselves, as he put it, because they stole billions of dollars. And those I'm talking to say, you know, Binance, that company, and the CEO had never called this out, the fraud or alleged fraud could have gone on for many more years. So there are folks in the crypto community, investors, who have a sense of relief that some of this was made public. When there was no leading indicator that there was anything going on beneath the surface. He was a big political donor and really seen as the face of consumer protection. That image is completely shattered from 6 months ago.
Is this about the trial, Kate, or is this about the court of public opinion? In other words, is this about court or is this about his public image here? And what is your sense based on your reporting on this guy?
My sense is that it is about the court of public opinion, is that he is trying to shift the narrative. He's trying to shift some of the attention. He does not get into some of the meaty allegations that people really want to know about. And he really did dodge that in this blog post. So I think my sense, and those I'm talking to, say it's a strategy to control the narrative. He's trying to get out of that trial that's set in October and really paint himself as a different, sort of ignorant CEO in this case. And it's similar to what we've heard, but this is the longest, lengthiest example of it. And he did this on Substack and sort of hinted that he'll be writing more. So we do expect to hear more from him leading up into October. He's got a lot of time on his hands.
Kate Rooney, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1. Russia releasing U.S. Navy veteran Taylor Dudley today. Dudley crossed into Russian territory from Poland last April, according to a lawyer who represents families of Americans detained overseas. The U.S. did not consider Dudley's detention wrongful, but his family is asking for privacy as they welcome him home. Number 2, NASA and NOAA scientists say last year was one of the hottest on record, either 5th or 6th, depending on which agency's data you look at. They say this is just going to keep happening, right? That this is just going to get worse because of what they describe as relentless climate change from burning coal, oil, and gas. Number 3, Elon Musk set a Guinness World Record for losing more money than anybody in history. Guinness says he's lost somewhere between $180 and $200 billion, mostly because of the bad performance of Tesla stock. Musk is still the 2nd richest person in the world, according to Forbes. Number 4, an iconic Kobe Bryant jersey is going up for auction. He wore it for more than 24 games in his 2007-2008 MVP season. This jersey is expected to be his most valuable item ever to go up for sale. Sotheby's thinks it could go for like $7 million. Number 5, did you see a tiny green light in the sky this morning? Not E.T. I'm sure you were wondering. It's a comet that was flying by Earth for the first time in 50,000 years. If you missed it, all good. You got another chance tonight and for the next few weeks to check it out. When we come back, a new report says rates of one kind of cancer are going up, way up. Why doctors are so concerned. We'll talk about it coming up. We're getting a closer look at some of those tornadoes tearing through the South that we told you about earlier. Officials in Selma, where we told you that tornado hit, says nobody has been killed by the tornado, thankfully, but there are some people who have been hurt. I want to show you what it looks like in Greensboro, Alabama, about 90 miles away from Birmingham. Roofs ripped off homes, pieces of people's houses thrown across the area, trees snapped in half. I mean, you can see it here. Let me bring Bill Cairns back in for more on this. Bill, bring us up to speed with the latest in just the last couple of minutes.
Just since I talked to you earlier, we've had one additional confirmation of a tornado. This was the one just north of Dothan, Alabama. I haven't heard of any reports of any damage or anything with that, but at least we know another one was reported. And this makes, now we're up to about 23, 24 for the day. And we're not done yet. We do still have a chance of additional tornadoes. And now we've watched that threat heading across the border from Georgia and even into portions of South Carolina. Here's the Atlanta area. The rain has stopped. You're all good. We were watching a strong storm from Griffin that went through Madison, and now that's under a severe thunderstorm warning. So what happens is as the storms begin to weaken, they still have a chance of producing wind damage, but no longer tornadoes. So that's good news on that one. The only active tornado warning we have is right here. See, here's Augusta, Georgia, where they play the Masters, and this is heading into areas of south central portions of South Carolina, north of Augusta, and this will be due west of Columbia. There's no other active tornado warning. So for the last 5 hours, we've had constant tornado warnings we've been tracking through Alabama, through Georgia, and now we're down to one. And actually, just as I was talking, this new red polygon just popped on here. So that's another active tornado warning in upstate portion. That's kind of not too far away from the Greenville area. So we'll keep an eye on those. And then later tonight, we'll push this to southern Georgia. And as we're mentioning, heading towards Charlotte and Columbia. So again, 24 tornadoes. Here we are in the middle of January.
Bill Cairns, thank you for staying close to a camera on that. We'll keep people up to speed. Appreciate it. Some disturbing news tonight now on prostate cancer, because after the rates on that decline for something like 2 decades, they're now going back up 3% every year from 2014 through 2019. It's the second leading cause of cancer death for men in this country, and doctors are really worried because what's driving this increase is more and more men getting diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer. That's tough to treat. Sometimes it is not curable. All of this out today in the American Cancer Society's annual report. And the numbers are prompting the ACS to launch a big plan to try to bring down the number of people who are dying from this cancer. Dr. John Torres joins us now. So the increase is being driven in advanced prostate cancer. Why?
And Hallie, you're right. 3% increase in cancer cases. 4 to 5% increase every year in advanced prostate cancer cases. Like you mentioned, advanced prostate cancer means that it's harder to treat, harder to get rid of, and can lead to more deaths. The reason experts are pointing to is because of PSA testing. Back in 2012, PSA testing changed. From before 2012, it was one of those things that you got on a regular physical exam. After 2012, it was one of those things that you talk to your doctor about, and you may or may not get. And then in 2018, it was further defined that most men probably didn't need this, having a discussion with your doctor, and so those PSA tests, the tests for prostate cancer wasn't being done as much, and they point to that being the reason these rates are increasing, which is contra to what is happening with a lot of other cancers, because overall since 91, cancer rates have declined by 33%. We're seeing an increase in prostate cancer, which is concerning a lot of experts, Hallie.
What else can you tell us about this new initiative here, this thing that the ACS is starting? What does that program actually look like?
So the reason they're setting this up, and it's called IMPACT. IMPACT stands for Improving Mortality from Prostate Cancer Together. The reason they're doing this is because of those recommendations they have, which say, you know, when you get to 50 years old until you're 69 years old, talk to your doctor about whether you need a test. Those ages go down if you're African American, even more so if you have a family history of prostate cancer. But the overall theme here is to talk to your doctor. A lot of people don't know how to do that, how to bring that information to them, how to get that information back from them. And so what they want to do with this IMPACT initiative is to get labs, clinics, and communities together, so that way it empowers people to go in and ask those questions they need to ask, get the tests they need to get if they need to get them, and get those cancer rates more under control, Hallie.
Dr. John Torres, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good to see you, as always. Thanks.
You bet.
Right now, some people with type 2 diabetes are saying they could be looking at some real health problems because they're finding it hard to get a specific medication called Ozempic, which we've talked about on this show before. It's something that's prescribed to people who have diabetes to help keep their blood sugar levels in check. But lately, it's become harder to get. Why? Because it's also become popular for losing weight, for people who might not actually medically need that to happen. Now, some diabetic patients say they've got to hunt around different pharmacies to try to find this stuff. One woman telling our Kristen Dahlgren how hard it's been for her. Watch.
It's scary, honestly. It's scary because, you know, it could cause me to have a spike and I could have a heart attack.
Kristen Dahlgren is joining us now. And Kristen, this is something that affects people's health. What else did you hear from Shane on this one?
Right. So, you know, Shane explained that he's pretty angry and frustrated at this point. He's tried other things. He hasn't been able to get a lot of alternatives. And what he's on, he's still seeing these spikes in his blood sugar that could be very dangerous. And so for him to see people on TikTok who don't appear to need to lose weight, don't have diabetes, don't have any comorbidities, certainly aren't obese, touting this as a quick fix to weight loss has left him pretty frustrated. The company we reached out to says it's a combination of the surge in people wanting to get this drug and also some supply chain issues that have been causing this. But a lot of diabetics quite worried tonight, Hallie.
We've been talking about this for a long time, though, Kristen, right? For months, this idea that there's a shortage of this. So how long is it going to last? Like, what is the timeline for getting this sort of this up to speed, if you will?
Right. And I wish I had better answers. I mean, as far as the company has told us, they said they expect the delays to be at least through January. So certainly a few more weeks, could be longer to get it back in places. Doctors that we talked to said if you're worried about it, you need to talk to your provider. Find out if there are other alternatives that you can do. Also go to your insurance company. Sometimes there's a mail order pharmacy that might have it in stock, and then you may have to call around to other pharmacies to try and get your hands on this medication, but certainly don't stop taking anything. Reach out to your doctor to see what the best path for you is, Hallie.
Kristen Dahlgren, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I want to bring in Mike Memoli now, who's got some new details on a story that's breaking here into us at NBC News Now, on the classified documents story. And Mem, this is about the timeline for when these boxes of documents or these batches of documents may have been moved. What's up?
So, Hallie, as part of our exclusive reporting this morning that aides close to President Biden who worked in his office in the closing days of his time as vice president have been interviewed by law enforcement, we also reported that the sort of chain of custody of documents went something like this, that boxes were packed up from his vice presidential office in the West Wing. They were then moved to a temporary office that was provided by the General Services Administration. You can kind of think of them as like an office manager for the whole federal government. So they were given temporary space for a period of time where those boxes then remained. And then part of our question has been about, all right, well, then what happened next? When did those boxes leave that GSA space and end up either in Biden's office downtown, the Penn Biden Center, or his personal home, as we're now seeing that they discovered documents there? Well, I just received a statement from the General Services Administration itself, which helps illuminate this timeline. They're saying that the Biden team used that office until July 21st in 2017. So that now gives us a benchmark for which to judge when documents may have left the possession of the GSA and found its way in. Now, again, these are boxes that include some documents that contain classified information went to other places. Our reporting indicates that these boxes went to a second location, an interim office space for the Penn Biden Center that eventually were moved into the Penn Biden Center. But I think this is part of how we're going to continue to report this story out, Hallie, in the days ahead, because it's really one of the questions the White House has been refusing to engage on, which is how did they end up discovering all these documents? Why did these documents make it out into multiple different locations? This statement from the GSA gives us at least a little additional information to help guide that reporting.
Mike Memoli, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, the so-called condo king of Miami now launching a new project, maybe at the worst possible time. We're going to take you to the ultra exclusive Fisher's Island next. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Midwest Bureau, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot's re-election campaign is now under investigation. Why? Apparently, they sent an email to public school teachers asking them to recruit students to volunteer for the campaign for school credit. Lightfoot oversees public schools in the city. The Inspector General for the schools is looking into it. Lightfoot's campaign today says it's committed to running an ethical race. From our Northeast Bureau, that nurses' strike in New York City is over, with the union coming to a tentative deal overnight, which included key sticking points for them, including better, as they call it, staffing ratios. They called the deal a historic victory. Also from our Midwest Bureau, Nebraska has a new senator. The state's governor picked his predecessor, Pete Ricketts, to fill the seat left open by Ben Sasse. Sasse officially resigned from Congress over the weekend to go be president of the University of Florida. Ricketts will serve a couple of years, 2 of them, ahead of a 2024 special Senate election. Let's take it to Miami now with another local story, but a pretty exclusive one that probably only applies if you're uber rich. Check it out. This is Fisher Island. Mega developer Jorge Perez, who's also known as the Condo King, is building a new 50-unit project there. If you're interested, prices start at the low price of $15 million. And I mean it. That is on the lower end. It even includes a $90 million penthouse just off the coast of Miami. You can only get there by ferry or yacht, or if you're the guest of somebody who lives here. But you can also get there if you're a reporter like CNBC's Diana Olick, who went there and joins me now. You can actually, Diana, we see the island in the background there. What's so interesting is when we think about housing costs going up during the pandemic, we think about, like, can I say, like, regular people mortgages and not necessarily $90 million homes. What is the appetite for this kind of thing right now?
Well, it's so interesting. You talk about mortgages. Nobody buying in on Fisher Island is using a mortgage right now. But yes, home prices rose dramatically during the pandemic and everywhere across the country. And now they're starting to ease back a little bit. And even in the ultra high end, we call the luxury $5 million and up. That's actually dropped 89% year over year in December. But But the $50 million range is way up. That is, about 10 years ago, you would see 1 to 3 homes every year sell above $50 million. Last year, 44. 44.
Wow.
So when you talk about sales on this island and the last plot being developed here by George Perez, he's not worried about it. In fact, here's how Perez sees the economy now.
We're thinking that interest rates and inflation has pretty much peaked. We're going to have a rough, in my opinion, 1 year to a year and a half, 2 years, and we are ready to weather that storm.
Now, he may say rough, but actually they've already sold a third of this condo project already, and they haven't even broken ground on it, Hallie.
What is living there going to be like, Diana? Like, I know the development is still in the early stages, but what does that life look like?
Okay, so Fisher Island is incredibly exclusive. As you said, you have to live there to get on the island. We had to have an escort to get on this morning, and we couldn't even buy our own lunch at the deli on the island because you have to be a member to do anything there. And what's so interesting was an agent told me that a lot of people want to buy on the island because it's the only way they can get into a golf club. There's a 7 to 10 year wait in Miami to get into a golf club, but if you're on Fisher Island, you're in. So this is, as we said, this amazing development that's going up, starting at $15 million. There's a $55 million ground floor condo that has its own, acre-sized yard. And then there's the penthouse, $90 million. If Perez gets $90 million for that, that would be a record, not just for Fisher Island, but for all of South Florida. The last condo that sold last year on Fisher Island, $40 million. So he is really up in the ante here.
The condo king, Diana Olick. Please go get a snack or an apple or a sandwich. We appreciate your service to the cause. Thank you. Some breaking news now on another very rich person. Apple CEO Tim Cook says he's planning to cut his 2023 pay by half after getting feedback from shareholders. SEC filings show Cook got paid $99.4 million in 2022, most of that in stock awards. It's going to get cut down now to $49 million. Cook says the decision was partly his own, even though the filing says the company's had exceptional performance. Cook's reportedly saying it's part of his way to address what he calls global challenges like inflation and the war in Ukraine. Still to come, a big burger chain, a very popular, beloved burger chain, is heading east. The ins and outs of InNOut's expansion coming up. So, maybe a new front in the so-called burger wars today. Who calls it that? Is that the burger wars? Is that a thing? I don't know, but I will tell you one thing. People love InNOut, and they are now boldly preparing to go where no animal-style fry has gone before, east of the Mississippi. By 2026, the West Coast-based chain plans to bring double-doubles to Tennessee with a new corporate hub just outside Nashville, a huge move for a restaurant that has nearly 400 locations up and down the Pacific Coast, out west. Nothing farther east than Texas, though, with Tennessee's governor saying, hey, it's no surprise why InNOut picked them.
It's just one more example of companies that look across this country and individuals that look across this country and see a state that reminds them that America hasn't lost her way.
Sinclair Asamoah is following the story for us, so let's just stipulate here. InNOut is one of those things that people are obsessed with or they don't care about. So it's like Wawa. I'm obsessed. So like Wawa in Philly, you're obsessed with it, right?
Yes.
InNOut. I'm literally the first stop when I go to LA.
I love that.
Midnight stop, I love it. So I basically am forcing everybody to do this. Thank you for doing the story because I'm forcing you to do it. What's so interesting here is it's also not easy to expand. It's a supply chain thing. It's how do you get the product there? It's easier to do when you have 300 stores up and down the California coast. A lot harder to get that stuff out to Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
So what's the plan?
Absolutely. So the plan is to expand. The reason is demand, because there are a lot of people just like you who absolutely love InNOut. They are your people. Unfortunately, I do not eat meat, so I've never quite enjoyed.
Fair. Totally fine.
But they
do have great fries.
They have great fries, and I've had them. But this is what the founder of InNOut, his granddaughter, had to say.
We get a lot of requests in different states to open, and I'm very happy to meet the customers here and make their dreams come true, and probably a few other states a little upset. So.
make their dreams come true. That's hilarious.
Yeah, making a lot of dreams come true. And she's often talked about the importance of faith and integrity in the company's brand. So over 75 years old, and they're still going strong, still innovating.
That's super interesting. I know that there are other chains that people feel this way about, like in D.C., even just on the group chats, right? People like Five Guys, Shake Shack. Yes. There's Whataburger, which also, for my Texas friends, is like a big Texas thing that is now expanding, I think, also to Tennessee. Do we know if In-N-Out is going to end up in New York, in D.C., like further east?
I mean, I think their hope is to just continue expanding, but there's been a lot of excitement about that In-N-Out, or excuse me, that Whataburger expansion. We actually saw lines when they were opening in Nashville, just dozens of lines of cars.
At what point, though, do you run the risk of like diluting? Because isn't part of what's special about In-N-Out that it's like kind of tough to get, at least for an East Coaster?
And it's like
Not
a coastal
for me,
thing, right? Exactly. I think that's the golden question. Do you keep sort of the niche nature of it, or do you expand and make a little more money? I mean, time will tell.
Make people like me quite
very happy with the burgers.
I've gotta love it, and the fries.
Maybe one day I'll know.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you. Thank you for just chatting with me about In-N-Out for 5 minutes.
Love it.
God love this show. Appreciate it. That's a wrap for this hour. We're gonna have more for you here tomorrow. Same time, same place. It's good to be with you. More coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.